Hello, grade 11s. Welcome back again. We are doing trigonometry, reduction formulae today. We've been working on this trigonometry, and it's such an interesting chapter, and it's the easiest of them all. This is where we should be capturing all the marks. Everyone should be getting full marks for trigonometry. All right. So today, as we will be busy doing the reduction formulae, please be reminded that your sine theta is opposite over hypotenuse, your cos is adjacent over hypotenuse, and your tan is opposite over adjacent. And then now, talking about your CAS diagram, we're looking at all four quadrants in grade 11. And we have 0 degrees and 360 here. And then you've got 90, and then 180 degrees, and then we have 270 there. Now, guys, if you look, this is your first quadrant, this is your second quadrant, and that's your third quadrant, and this is your fourth quadrant. And we've got our cast diagram. Now, if you look in your first quadrant, guys, where you have A, and then what does this A represent? It represents that all the trig ratios are positive in the first quadrant. So if you are falling onto the first quadrant, your sine is positive, your cos is positive, and your tan is positive, together with the reciprocals, your cosec, sec, and cot. But when it comes to the second quadrant, you have sine, which is positive, and also its reciprocal. And then in the third quadrant, we have t, which is our tan, that is positive in the third quadrant, so it means that the rest will be negative. And then in the fourth quadrant, we've got cos, that is positive in our fourth quadrant. So in other words, if I fall into the fourth quadrant and I'm given sine, I check first, okay, that quadrant, it's where cos is positive, so it means that the rest is negative, okay? Right. Now, let's just take an example here. Let's assume you're given sine of 180 degrees plus theta. All right. Now, 180 degrees, it's a direction. Where are we? Right? So you've got sine of 180 plus. So that is the third quadrant. How is sine in the third quadrant? It is negative because that's where tan is positive. So if you look, this is sine of, it's negative sine of theta. Now, let's just check with our calculator. If I give you sine of 210, you see, this is 180 degrees plus an angle, which gives us our solution is negative. Now, let's try another example. Let's say we have cos of 261. Now, where is 261? Right? It's between 180 degrees and 270, and that is the third quadrant. We are expecting an answer of a negative. So, because it is the third quadrant and tan is the one that's positive. So you see. Now let's see if maybe we've got cos. Let's try in this quadrant, in the fourth quadrant. Let's take cos 330. Right. Now, guys, watch. What sort of answer are you expecting there? 330 is between 270 and 360. And according to our CAS diagram, in the fourth quadrant, that's where cos is positive. And we're given cos there. So that's cos 330, which is your cos of 360 minus 30. So our answer should be a positive answer. Cos of 330 is the square root of 3 all over 2. So you can check with your calculator if your answer is correct or not. All right. Now, we will also be looking at your co-ratios, and then the co-ratio of sine is cosine, and the co-ratio of cosine is sine. Now, if I've got the 90 and the 270, you'll see when you're working with the examples, the 90 plus the 90 minus is going to change the nature of your trig ratio that is given at that particular time. Now, let's just check with a few examples. Let's say you've got cos of 30 degrees and then sine of 60 degrees. Okay, so now we can quickly go to our calculator. That's cos of 30. This gives us root 3 over 2. Okay, so that's root 3 over 2. Now, let's check sine of 60, right? That is root 3 over 2. Now, guys, let's just establish what has happened here. Okay? I've got cos 30. Cos 30, this will be your cos of 90 degrees minus 60. And then we check 90 degrees minus is the first quadrant. How is cos in the first quadrant? It is positive, but because of 90, your cos will change to sine. So cos of 30 will be equivalent to sine of 60 degrees. So in other words, if I've got sine of 10, it will be exactly the same as your cos of 80, all right? And so on and so on. All right, so now if you look, going back to our CAS diagram, as we were saying, this is 0 degrees and 360, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, and then your 270. Now, in the first quadrant, I can have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to 90 degrees, all right? So, it is 0 degrees, or 0 plus an angle, right? So it's more than 0, but less than 90 degrees and 90 degrees minus. So we're expecting to be getting degrees like 1, 0, 25, 37, 86, and so forth, so in your first quadrant. But then when we come to the second quadrant, as you can see, it's between 90 and 180. So that's 91, 92, 93, up to 180 degrees. So we have in the second quadrant, it's 90 degrees plus or 180 degrees minus. And then in the third quadrant, you've got your 181, 182, up to 270. So it's going to be 180 plus or 270 degrees minus an angle. Same thing applies with the fourth quadrant. You've got 270 plus and 360 degrees minus. And mind you, with the positive and the negative angles, so if it's a plus, we are in the first quadrant, and then if it's a minus, we're moving that direction. Okay. Right. Now, some of the things that we're going to be talking about, it's your special angles, right? So the special angles that we'll be talking about is your 30, your 45, and your 60, all right? So back in the day, we used to have a triangle like this, whereby you've got a 1, and the square root of 2, working it from your Pythagoras, okay? Then with the special angles, when you are working with 45, so say for instance, you need to know what is sine 45 equals 2. You know that sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so that's going to be 1 over the square root of 2, or you can just rationalize the denominator, and then you get the root 2 all over 2. Same thing applies to cos. Cos 45 is 1 over root 2, or the square root of 2 over 2. Okay. But now the tan of 45, remember, tan is y over x, so that is 1 over 1, which gives us a 1. So these, at any given time, you can be asked to, you're simplifying a problem when it gets to the special angles. There's no need to go to your calculator, guys, because you can learn this thing. And I advise that you guys make sure that you know your special angles by heart, because when you're busy, you're taking the Olympiad questions, you don't need to use a calculator, so you have to know them by heart. Okay. And then we come to the 60 and the 30. Remember, guys, this is 30. Man, what am I doing? Okay, so this is 30. All right, to complete that triangle, 90 plus 60 plus the unknown equals to 180. All right, so now if you take the triangle, the 60, right? Now, if you want to work out what sine 60 is, you know that sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So opposite in this case is your root 3, hypotenuse is 2, okay? And then if you're working out cos of 60, that is your adjacent, cos of 60 will be adjacent over hypotenuse, which is a half, and then your tan of 60 is opposite over adjacent, so that's square root of 3 over 1. Okay, all right. Now, moving on, let's take the 31, right? So now, with 30 degrees, you can turn around your triangle so that you can be able to see which one is adjacent, because if it's sitting like this, some of us are getting confused and we're thinking this is the opposite, where else we said the opposite is the one that's directly opposite the angle. So for 30, opposite is 1, the adjacent is the square root of 3. Okay, right. Now let's work out sine 60 sine 30 degrees is, now we know that sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so the opposite is 1, so that's half. And then cos of 30 is adjacent over hypotenuse, and then tan of 30 degrees will be opposite over adjacent, which is 1 over root 3. And then you can rationalize your denominator by multiplying by the square root 3 over 3, which gives us the root 3 all over 3. Now, there's something interesting here, guys. If you look, sine of 30, right? Sine of 30 is a half, which is exactly the same as your cos of 60. Now, see what happens. There's a 30, there's a 60. So the co-ratios, you see, sine of 30 is sine of 90 degrees minus 60, all right? 90 minus first quadrant, but because of 90, sine will have to change to cos. Now, if you look at your cos of 30, it is equivalent to your sine of 60, and then we get the square root 3 over 2 for both. Okay. Right. Guys, you'll take this example quickly, right? Reduce the following expression to a trigonometric ratio of theta, right? So I'm giving you just a minute to work on this problem, and then we'll look at it together. Right, let's go. Grade 11, you've got your sine of 180 degrees plus. First of all, we need to establish which quadrant is 180 plus. Now remember, if you look at your CAS diagram, this is 0 plus, 90 minus, 90 plus, 180 minus. Then this is where we have 180 plus. So it is in the third quadrant. And if you look at your CAS diagram, all students take coffee. So T is the one that's positive. So it means that we've got a negative sign of theta. Right. Guys, just work on some problems for now. You've got your books and whatnot, but just go quickly, grab some water, and then you'll come back after break and we'll continue with some nice trigonometry. Let's go for break. Welcome back, grade 11s. I'm sure you are ready to continue with your maths, and let's push this, guys. I've got the next question for you. Reduce the following expression to a single trigonometric ratio of theta. So in other words, at the end of the day, you might have maybe sine theta, cos theta, or tan theta, whatever, but in a simplified way. Okay, so you've got cos 90 degrees minus theta over sine 360 minus theta. Work with a friend for 2 minutes, and then I come back and help you from there. Let's take 2 minutes. All right, guys, let's just check if we're on the right track. We said, first of all, we need to establish which quadrant we're working on. The 90 degrees minus, okay? So it means that it's an acute angle. It's in the first quadrant. And we said all the trig ratios are positive in the first quadrant. Okay, now let's go back. We said the 90 degrees and the 270, it changes the nature of your sine or cos or tan. All right, so sine will have to change to cos, or cos changes to tan, but you guys are doing the caps. Tan used to change to cot. All right, so now we've got a 90 degrees, so it means that your cos is going to be sine. So you have sine of theta. Divide by 360 minus. Which quadrant is 360 minus? That's the fourth quadrant. How is sine in the fourth quadrant? Negative. Okay, that's number one. Do we have a 90 or 270? No, so it means that it's going to stay the same. So you get sine of theta. Now, there's a sine over sine, which gives us a -1. So your simplified version of cos 90 degrees minus theta over sine 360 minus theta is -1. I hope that helps, guys. Now, the next problem, I'm going to do it as an example for you guys because it might be a bit tough for some of us. Reduce the following expression to a trigonometric ratio. Okay. Now, let's just check. We know that I have to be starting with 180 minus, or 270 minus, or 360 minus, and whatnot. Now, guys, if I have, let's say, I'm from here, going all the way here, right, or back here. Guys, are you watching what's happening, right? Now, if I add 360 or subtract 360, I get back to the same angle, right? If you see it's complicated, let's say they're giving you maybe 1060 and you are used to working 0, 90, 180, 270 and then 360. Keep on subtracting 360 up until you get it into a smaller one which is reasonable to work with. All right, so in this case, you're starting with a negative theta minus 180. As we have said, if you add 360, you still get back to the same angle. So I've got tan of 360 minus theta minus 180. So I have added a 360 there. All right, now let's check. We've got like terms there. 360 minus 180, this is tan of 180 degrees minus theta. Now, can you see, guys, that it's now simplified to what we have been working with? Now, we go back. 180 degrees minus, which quadrant is that, right? 180 degrees minus, that is the second quadrant. How is tan in the second quadrant? It is the sine quadrant, so it means that tan is negative. You get negative tan of theta. So your simplified form is negative tan of theta. All right. Now, the complicated way of looking at it is when you have your tan of, you take a negative out, you've got theta plus 180 degrees. Okay. Now, you deal with the negative first. Okay. Right. Negative, let's say this is negative k. You've got tan of negative k, we said negative, that's a fourth quadrant, so we get negative tan of 180 degrees plus theta. Now remember, 180 plus is the third quadrant. How is tan in the third quadrant? Positive, so you get your final answer to be negative tan theta. So whichever one, guys, you use, as long as you don't break any maths rule, you're still fine. All right, now guys, let's move on to the next problem. Now, I'm giving you 3 minutes to work on this because it's a combination of what we've been reducing the bigger one to your special angles and whatnot. Now, you'll be applying the special angles. I'm giving you 3 minutes to work on this problem. Let's go work with a friend. 3 minutes. All right, guys, let's check if we are doing the right thing. You have sine of 240. Reduce this to an acute angle. You will have your sine of 180 degrees plus 60, okay? Multiplied by the tan of 360 degrees minus 60, right? Multiplied by, now that's actually a plus, cos of 360 degrees minus 30. Guys, you have to be extra careful here. The 180 plus, it has to take you back there. What is 180 degrees plus? That is 240. The 360 minus 60, it's 300. The 360 minus 30, that's 330. Okay. Now, you've got 180 degrees plus 60. Which quadrant is that? That is the third quadrant. How is sine in the third quadrant? It is negative. So you get negative sine of 60 multiplied by tan of 360 minus, okay? 360 minus which quadrant? That is the fourth quadrant. How is tan in the fourth quadrant? It is negative because, remember guys, we're here. This is all students take coffee. Where are we? Fourth quadrant. That's C. That's cos that is positive. So it means that your tan is negative. So negative tan of 60 degrees plus 360 minus is the fourth quadrant. How is cos in the fourth quadrant? Positive. So you get positive cos of 30 degrees. Okay. Now, guys, you go back to our special angles. Remember, okay, I need to take out the triangle. Let me use this one. No, that's oopsie. All right, so let's just draw it here. What is happening? Okay, that's 60 degrees. Then that's your 30. Now, guys, watch. Sine 60 is the square root 3 over 2. Cos 30 is root 3 over 2. Now let's just go to our triangle. Sine 60 is the square root 3 over 2. Okay, then we write that down. But what is negative times negative? That's a plus. So we've got the square root 3 over 2 times tan of 60 degrees, right? Tan 60, that is y over x. So y is this, root 3 over x is 1, plus cos of 30. Cos of 30 is x over r, so it's a square root 3 over 2, which gives us, you've got the root 3 times the root 3, which is 3 over 2, plus square root of 3 over 2. Okay, now, because you're dealing with a fraction, this simplifies to an LCD of 2, and then you get 3 plus root 3. Now, guys, a cool trick about this is that what you do is, you given your sine 240, tan 300, plus cos 330. You've got a natural display. All right. Now, there's your calculator. You type it in as it is, sine of 240 times tan of 300 plus cos of 330. Right, now, once you do this, okay, so you've punched it in your calculator, you've got equals to, so whatever you're working on, you know that you're working towards a certain answer, which is 3 plus the square root 3 over 2, okay? So it means that if you don't get an answer, which is exactly the same as that, you have made some mistake somewhere in your working. So this is why I'm saying this chapter is the easiest one. You just punch it in your calculator, and then you know that you're working towards a certain answer, and you have to relax when you're doing trigonometry. That's the easiest. For now, guys, I'm going to give you time to go for break again. I think this time around, just get something stronger, get some coffee, and then come back and we do this mathematics. Let's go for break. Welcome back, grade 11s. I'm sure you've got something stronger, which is your coffee, all right, like black coffee, and now you are glued to your screen and you are working, all right. So we have the next problem. Because you've been working on this reduction formula and whatnot, I'm just going to give you only 2 minutes because of time, guys. Just work quickly and then we can look at the solution together. Let's go. 2 minutes. Nice one, grade 11s. Let's continue. Let's check. We said we're going to be breaking it down to your acute angles. This is cos of 180 degrees minus 30, right? Mind you, keep on checking. 180 minus is 150 times tan of 180 degrees plus 45 divide by, remember, this is negative. It falls under here. Sine is negative, so you get negative sine of 60. Now, this is what I was talking about. You've got 480. What do you do? Because we said if you add or subtract 360, so 480 we can subtract 360, we're sitting on 120, so we can break down this is cos of 180 degrees minus 60, all right? Now, next, 180 degrees minus an angle. Which quadrant is that? That's the second quadrant. How is cos in the second quadrant? It's negative. So you get negative cos of 30 degrees multiplied by 180 plus. Which quadrant is that? That is the third quadrant. And it's the tan quadrant. Remember the CAS diagram? It's a tan quadrant. Tan is positive. So tan 45 divided by negative sine 60 times 180 minus, that is the second quadrant. Cos is negative, you get negative cos of 60. Now, guys, negative divided by negative, it's a plus. Now, very important, cos 30 is exactly the same as sine 60. Remember when they add up to 90, as we have said, cos 20 is the same as sine 60, right? And then you can check that with your calculator. Cos 45 is the same as sine 45, right? Those co-ratios. Okay, guys. Now, you've got, this is negative tan of 45, it's a 1, divide by 60. Remember that it's a special angle, right? Tan of 60, you should be knowing it by heart. 60 should give you a half. What's happening here? Yeah, a half. Okay, so this is over a half, which is, this is 1 over 1 over 2. We get negative 2 as our final answer. Now, guys, we need to just check. If we don't get a negative 2, like I said, you confirm with your calculator. You have cos of 150, close bracket, times tan 225 and then sine of negative 60 times cos of 480 is negative 2. So it means that what you are working on, and at the end of the day you get a minus 2, if you punch it in your calculator now, for instance, a question like this will be like 5 marks, 6 marks. So it means that you've got maximum marks because you are getting the very same thing that your calculator confirms. Okay. Now, let's do this one, all right? It's short, it should be short and quick. I give you 2 minutes again. You work with your friend, and then exactly 2 minutes, then we look at it together. Let's go. All right, guys, you can stop. Let's just look at it together now. All right, 90 degrees plus, it's your second quadrant. Thank you. Okay, now 90 degrees plus is the second quadrant. How is the given ratio in the second quadrant? Because we're given cos and second quadrant we have S, cos is negative, right? But because it's a 90 degrees, right, that is your co-ratio, so you've got your sine x. Divide by 360 minus is a fourth quadrant, and we have C. What are we given? That's cos, so it means that cos is positive. So you've got cos of x times 180 minus is the second quadrant, where sine is positive. So now we're given tan, it means that tan is negative. So you've got your tan, negative tan x. Right, now guys, negative over negative, it's a plus, right? Now, this, remember when we were doing identities, tan of x is sine x over cos x. So in other words, if I see sine x over cos x, we can make that tan x, or tan x is sine x over cos x. So negative over negative is a positive, so you've got your sine x over cos x times, there's a 1, sine x over cos x. So this is over 1. Now, if you look, this is cos divided by cos, sine divided by sine, and you get your answer to be positive 1. So well done to all of you who've got the correct answer, which is 1. Now, guys, the next one, let's just quickly do it together because it's similar to the one that we just did. Sine of 180 minus. 180 minus, which quadrant is that? That's a second quadrant. It's a sine quadrant. What am I given? I'm given sine, so sine is positive. So sine x times the tan x times 90 plus. Which quadrant is that? That's a second quadrant. How is the given ratio in the second quadrant? Positive. But because of 90, sine changes to cos. Divide by. Now remember, I'm starting with an angle, x minus 180. I keep on adding 360. So if I add 360 here, I'm going to have a tan of 180 degrees plus x. Now, tan 180 plus x, which quadrant is that? That's a third quadrant. How is tan in the third quadrant? That's positive. So you get positive tan of x times cos of minus x. We're falling into this quadrant where there's c that's positive. So in other words, we have a positive cos x times sine of minus x, fourth quadrant, sine is negative, we get negative sine of x. Now, guys, if you look at this, now we are multiplying. Remember, don't forget to put a bracket there. Your answer is going to be negative because everything at the top is positive. Bottom, you've got a plus, plus, and a minus, so you will get a minus. Now, you've got a tan x divides a tan x, cos x divides a cos x, sin x divides a sin x. Your final answer is a negative 1. Okay? Right. Now, guys, we'll look at the last one. I give you only 1 minute. Just quickly look, reduce it. Just take 1 minute and then we will look at it together. Just one. Right. Now let's check, guys. This is sine of 12. Now, cos of 102 is the same as cos of 90 degrees plus 12 minus, this is cos squared negative 12. We get positive cos squared 12. Now, 90 degrees plus is the second quadrant. Cos is negative, so we get a negative sine of 12 times the sine of 12 minus cos squared 12. Now, this is minus sine squared 12 minus cos squared 12 degrees. Okay, now to just finalize, you take out a common factor of minus bracket sine squared 12 degrees plus cos squared degrees. Now, guys, remember when we're doing the squared identities, right, that sine squared theta plus cos squared theta equals to 1. So same thing applies here. You've got sine squared 12 plus cos squared 12. This is an identity. It is equals to 1. So you've got a negative 1. Right. Well done, guys, on your work today. You are so consistent and you are working. I wish you all the best. And remember that trigonometry is the easy section, but it carries a lot of marks. Guys, I'll be meeting you in the next lesson for your trigonometry again. See you next time. Bye-bye.